Then we'll discuss this new topic, the risk associated with international trade and documentary credits. It's a very, very important topic for trade students, right? When they are learning international trade, because international trade itself is high risk area. It's very high risk, right? So when you are doing international trade operations, you have to ensure that you are trying to identify those risks and try to mitigate it. If somebody wants to do international trade without taking any risk, then he won't be able to do the business, because risk is an inherent thing in international trade operations. You can't eliminate risk. You can't eliminate risk in international trade, but you can mitigate. So what we have to do, what we should learn and what we should do is try to mitigate the risk in international trade as much as possible, as much as possible, right? So it is very, very important that we uh, identify the risk, and then even if you are a trade guy or even if you are a branch person.
Can't hear you.
You can't just tell him, sorry, I'm in the branch. In the branch, we are not handling LCs or anything. So therefore, you have to speak to our trade finance department. Don't do it. Then the customer will lose the confidence on you, right? You should know at least not to open the LCs. Last week also I told you, but just to have a discussion, negotiation with the customer. So the risk in international trade is one of the most important areas for a banker as well as to the customers. Right. And this risk in international trade operations, these international trade operations are uh, short term. I used to call these 4S's. You guys knows about 5S concept of Japan. Now this is a 4S, right? First S is short term. All our trade operations, as we know, last week we learned about it. Maximum 180 days. Maximum 180 days. 99.9% of the transactions. So it's short term. And self-liquidating. It is self-liquidating. Self-liquidating in the sense we import goods and we sell the goods and pay the loans. We sell the goods and pay the loans. Self-liquidating, right? Secured by the underlying goods. Even if we can't sell it, at least the goods are there. Secured by the underlying goods and speedily completed. The transactions are speedily completed once the goods comes. Maximum about within 3 or 4 weeks time, we'll complete the transaction. Or when we open the LC also, within 3 to 4 weeks, we get the goods, right? So it is always short term, self-liquidating, and secured by underlying goods and speedily completed. 4S's, right? Then the documented credit. And any of you can you uh, by memory, can you tell what is a document trade? What is a document trade? A definition like a word to word, if I can get the idea, it's more than enough. What is a document credit? Right? It is to pay a certain amount immediately or at a future date. If we pay immediately, we call it what type of LC? To pay a certain amount immediately, what type of LC?
Cited.
Site LC. If you pay at a future date,
Users LC.
Users
LC. Right? So to pay a certain amount immediately or at a future date, provided, I put it in capital letters, provided. ඒක අපි ගෙවන්නේ මේ conditions උනොත් විතරයි. Right? Provided that the stipulated documents are presented and undertaken from the importer's bank to the exporter, and only if the documents are in strict conformity with the DC terms. If the documents are in strict conformity with the DC terms, then we will pay. That is the undertaking. So, in other words, it's a conditional undertaking. It's a conditional undertaking, right? Issuing bank will not just pay. They will pay only if the documents are in strict conformity with the DC terms, right? In UCP 600, Article 4, UCP 600, Article 4, it says, credits by their nature are separate transaction from sales or other contracts. Credits by their nature are separate transactions from sales or other contract. Right? Then Article 5 says, in credit operations, all parties concerned deal with documents, not with the goods. We are not dealing with goods. We are only dealing with documents. Right? Then, not with goods, services, or other performance to which the documentary credit may relate. Right? We are only dealing with documents. Article 14A, it says, a nominated bank acting on its nomination, a confirming bank, if any, and the issuing bank must examine the presentation to determine on the documents appear on their face to constitute a compliant presentation. It's unknown whether the documents presented are appear to be a compliant presentation. That means the documents should be in par with whatever the terms and conditions of the LC. And we are checking only the documents. And we are not a policeman. The banks are not policemen to check all these small things, right? Right. Consideration of risk involved in international trade. Consideration of risk involved in international trade. Right. Before deciding whether to enter into a foreign market, either as a buyer or a seller, the business must first consider the risk to which it will be exposing itself. Very important. If a customer comes and asks you, Miss, I want to start international trade, right? So what are the risks? I'll have to check. I'll have to, I have to be concerned about what risk. Then we have to advise the customer. About 2-3 days back, I had a long discussion with CEO of Chamber of Commerce. He mentioned to me, since recently, there are so many frauds are happening. Trade frauds are happening. Right? Some customers have lost millions and millions, and some are now, because of that, some have gone bankrupt. यहाँ पे लंका भी है. So this is a very serious situation. Very, very serious situation. Then when you analyze the thing, when you get a case study and analyze the thing, we have done the mistake. The customers and also the up to a certain extent, I will say banks also. You can't just wash your hands. If the customer is opening the LC, you can't just wash your hands. You have to go through before they open the LCs, you have to have a mechanism for you to go through the LC to check whether the documentation is correct and whether there's any gray areas. ඒවා අපි කාගකත් කරන්න. එකක් කරන්න knowledge එක නැහැ. අනිත් එක හිතනවා ඔය මොනවටද වැඩි වැඩ කරන්න කියලා. I am happy with whatever I'm doing. Why should we? ඒකට පස්සේ customers අරම දොස් කියන්න බෑ. One of the areas which the customer has to consider is the language and the culture. What is the most popular language in LC business? What is the standard language in LCs?
English.
English. What is LCs? වැඩිම use කරන language එකක්ද? මොකද්ද? ඉංග්‍රීසිද? ඉංග්‍රීසි නෙමෙයි. ඉංග්‍රීසි තමයි ගොඩක් වෙනවා. ඒත් සමහර countries තියෙනවා. දැන් චයිනාවල they never use most of the even the LCs, sometimes the domestic ones, they open in Chinese language. අපි තමයි ඉංග්‍රීසි කර ගහගෙන ඉන්නේ. Spanish, French, there are so many. We have come across those type of LCs. But when it comes to Sri Lanka, we only accept the LCs which we can read, that is in rupees, not rupees, English විතරයි තියෙන්නේ. English ටිකෙන් ළමයි අපි බලන්නේ. Right? And when it comes to some negotiations, language is going to be a barrier. Right? And because English is not the universal language. It is usage is not universal, at least. It's a universal language, but its usage is not universal. There are certain countries, they don't touch English. They have their own native languages. Right? So, there is one. The other one is culture. The cultural differences and sensitivities are equally likely to provide potential traps. Right? Cultural differences. Can you give me some example? මේ session එක මම යන්න පුළුවන් තරම් examples වලින් ඒතර ඔයගොල්ලෝ ලේසි. Can you give me some example? Cultural differences. No. Marisha? Can you give me some example? Shanali? නම් ටික මතක ළමයි. කාටද කියන්න බලන්න. Okay. Let's take Sri Lanka and Saudi Arabia. Sri Lanka and Saudi Arabia. Okay. When we are opening LCs, or when we received LCs or whatever, right? Are we going to open LCs asking for certain meat products from Saudi, or for that reason any Muslim country? No. According to their culture, there are certain meat products which they call haram. It's prohibited. Okay? It is not acceptable. So if it is haram, then that haram is only for those people, their culture. අපිට නැහැ. අපේ එතන cultural differences enough. Certain meat products, I don't want to name, but there are other students also, Muslim students are thinking that way. Namot Nokia, ඔයගොල්ලන්ට තේරෙනවා මොකක්ද කියලා. Right? So before you start business with those countries, you have to have a good understanding, knowledge, the legal issues in the different legal systems in countries. In Saudi, you get Sharia law, but in Sri Lanka, normal British law, right? Then different legal systems, uncertainty of legal procedures, or changes in legislation, exchange control rules, all those things are there. Buyers and sellers. When it comes to buyers and sellers, exchange rate and currency risk. We are having this issue in Sri Lanka, right? Bargaining power. If another party is more powerful in bargaining, you have to give it. This is what is happening with the Chinese guys, right? And Muslim countries like Jordan, Lebanon, right? When they come to the table, bargaining table, yeah, even they mix their language, even they are not fluent in English, they will mix their language, but they will stress their point. මේසට මෙහෙම ගහලා තමයි කතා කරන්නේ. මෙහෙම ගහනවා. හැබැයි ඒ ගහනවා කියන්නේ රණ්ඩුවට නෙමෙයි. That's their way. Right? That's their way. Then custom and practices. Different countries, there are different customs and practices, and that particular one also we have to have some consideration. Financial risk. The buyer seller concerns on deferred or advance payment. A buyer Normally a buyer wants deferred payment or advance payment. Normally a buyer wants deferred payment or advance payment. Tell
Deferred payment.
me, deferred payment. Right? Seller, on the other hand, seller
Advance
wants
payment.
to have
Advance payment.
advance payment. Right? They prefer advance payment. Instant payment. In credit risk. Risk under different payment methods. If it is advance payment, it's a riskier to the buyer. If it is open account, it is riskier to the seller. Right? Okay, then role of bank guarantees to mitigate buyers against this risk. Can take bank guarantees to mitigate the risk. Transport risk. The length of time the goods need to travel to get to their final destination. So there's a risk. If the goods are coming from New York to Colombo, they have to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Normally the length of time is about 21 days, right? Then past the Mediterranean Sea and all. Sometimes they might get caught to these Somalian pirates. There's a risk there, right? Then the risk of goods being damaged or being tampered with while in transit. This happened, right? The risk of goods being damaged or being tampered with while in transit. Appropriate insurance to mitigate this risk. You have to take appropriate insurance to mitigate the risk. Right? Okay. Common risk in trade operations. We have some other things we have just covered. Again, we are reiterating some of the risk. One is sovereign and regulatory risk. That is country risk. Sovereign and regulatory risk. That is country risk. Some countries, there may be sudden impose of foreign payment restrictions. By some countries. The best method to learn this is think of example. Right? These restrictive government policies, sudden impose of foreign payment restrictions. Give me one country at the moment. Give me one country. Impose of foreign payment
Sri Lanka.
restrictions.
Sri
Sri
Lanka.
Lanka. Very good answer. Right? අපිට මේ ඔක්කොම තියෙනවා. කොවිඩ් වගේ අපිට උනා එම්බිරිසාව කැස්ස ඒ ඔක්කොම සිම්ප්ටම්ස් තියෙන අපේ කාව. ඒව තමයි මේ තියෙන්නේ. මේකට ඒ කන්ට්‍රි එක ඇප්ලයි කරගත්තම හරි ලේසි පාඩම් කරගන්න. Then restrictive government policies ගැන අපි කතා කළා. exchange controls. Sri Lanka, right? We have little bit. We have a very strict exchange control, but later it was reduced. Right? Later it was reduced. Again, now they have imposed tariff and quota restrictions. Tariff and quota restrictions. Do we have that in Sri Lanka?
Yes.
Yeah. What sort of tariff and quota restrictions in Sri Lanka? Huh? What sort of? We have GSP plus නේද? අපිට තියෙනවනේ. ඒවා restrictions තියෙනවා. ඒවා සමහරවිට GSP withdraw කරනවා, දානවා, right? A lot of things. Then import and export prohibitions. Import and export prohibitions. Export import licensing. Do we have? Yes. Right? Then trade embargoes. Right? Trade embargoes. Then anti-dumping legislation. What do you mean by anti-dumping legislation? Certain countries have anti-dumping legislation.
Is it the dumping the bad goods? I mean,
Bad. Yeah. Unwanted thing, garbage.
garbage.
Yeah, we'll get. Lanka, you know,
We had, right?
we had. Are we implementing? If so, about 1 year back, how can we received so many containers of waste hospital garbage from UK? Can you remember? There was a big haho imported by one of our big shots. අපේ එහෙම තියෙනවා නම් තියෙන්න එපා. කොහොම ඒවා? ඒ ඔක්කොම පයින්නවා. Right? So anti-dumping legislation.
So, sir, did we have or we are not implementing? Or we don't have?
We have not 100% like some developed countries. We don't have fully, but we have.
Okay.
But we are not implementing it properly.
Okay.
Yeah. So ours is Sri Lanka is a country. All these rules and regulations can be bent by the influenced people. Right? This is the common thing for these third world countries. Politics. Right? Then
So what this?
yeah.
Sorry.
Tell me. I like this
No,
conversation.
I didn't understand this trade embargoes.
Trade embargoes. What do you mean by trade embargoes? Trade embargoes. Can we do trading with South Korea? North Korea? Yes, Sri Lanka doesn't have a trade embargo. But there are trade embargoes on North Korea. By whom? By United Nations, UN, as well as US. UN and US. Right? Again, there are trade embargoes against Iran. By, again, US and UN. US and UN. Right? ඒ වගේ trade embargoes තියෙනවා. prohibitions. They won't allow other countries to do trading with Iran. With Iran, that's one of the biggest oil exporter. If you want to buy oil from Iran, there are so many restrictions. The only legitimate way the UN has given, I'm talking about the embargoes, the legitimate concession the UN has given, you can get down or you can exchange oil against food. Against food. That means for Iranian nationals, they need food. They want to survive, right? So UN has given some concession. Okay, if you want to import food, then for the exact value, you can export oil. ඒක තියෙන්නේ oil for food කියලා program එකක් තියෙනවා UN එකේ oil for food. ඒ oil for food program එකේ තමයි අපිට LCs අරගන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්නේ. දැන් මම කොහොමද දන්නේ නැහැ. දැන් ඔය issues හරියට තියෙනවා. Trade embargoes. Some other countries, earlier we had embargoes for Cuba, then now it's no more. Right? It's like that. Only the superpowers decide. Inadequate foreign exchange reserves. Have you got the answer to your question? How the question gave me? Who asked that question? Marisha, didn't I? Who asked that question?
Not me.
Huh?
Not me, sir. I did not answer.
Yeah. Who has asked that question? It's a good question. And at least for the benefit of the others.
I think it was Chandi.
Chandi, can you hear me? Very good question. Very good question. Now, okay, for example, Prasanna, if you want to do any business with Iran, if you want to do any business with Iran, right? How you can do any options? Because US UN US sanctions, US sanctions. So then how we are going to do the business with Iran?
Through Dubai.
Through Dubai. Why? Dubai වලින් ගියාම මොකද වෙන්නේ?
They can deal with Iran, right?
They can deal with Iran. Yes, but can they deal with Iran in US dollars? If we deal with Iran in US dollars, then the payment will be from which nostro account? The payment will be from US nostro account. When the money goes to US for the payment, what they will do is, if the transaction touches Iran, they will freeze the money. Right? අපිට හම් වෙන්නේ නැහැ, අරගොන්ට හම් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ මේක freeze කරනවා. That's so serious like that. I mean, a lot of people, what they do is they do transaction with Iran in other currencies. You can do transaction in GBP, Euro, right? ඒව යන්න පුළුවන්. Unfortunately, we can't do transaction in Sri Lanka rupees. Sri Lanka rupees in nane. Otherwise, අපිට වෙන්න පුළුවන්. Right? Okay. හැබැයි ඉරාන් එක අපිට ACU currencies කරන්න පුළුවන්. There's no restriction for that. ACU currencies. Iran is one of the parties. Then inadequate foreign exchange reserves. Scarcity of convertible currency. එක හරිනේ. ලංකාවට දැම්මනම් හරි. You can explain nicely. Fluctuation or volatility of foreign exchange exposure. Right? Fluctuation of volatility of foreign exchange exposure. Right. මේ දෙකම අපිට තියෙනවා. Legal risk. Risk of foreign laws and courts. Dispute settlement legal policies. Country to country, it's changed. So before you start business with the counterparty, you have to check all these things. Right? Injunction order against payment. මොනවද වෙන්නේ? Injunction order against payment. Is it happening in Sri Lanka? ආරංචි කරන්නේ සද්දයක් කරන්නේ. අපි ලංකාවේ තිබුණා මේක ගොඩක් injunction orders. But now, I think during Mrs. Chandrika Kumartunga's time, she introduced a law to say, now you can't just get an injunction. You have to prove it. Right? Those days, immediately within hours, you can put a motion and then ask for an injunction order. Then make a proof කරන්න ඕන. Right? ඒ වගේ આવොත් අපිට issue. දැන් ලංකාව හොඳයි. Earlier, we can easily get an injunction. Then many acts that are perfectly legal in one country can be illegal in another country. Indeed, we could conceivably break a host of laws and not ever be aware of it. Right? The same is true for law of contracts, employment, competition, and other business laws. Foreign exchange risk. Just read through this. Foreign exchange risk. Trade is always at the mercy of the exchange rate fluctuation. Example, Sri Lanka. Due to various political, economic, and even purely speculative reasons. Here, we don't have any speculative reasons. We are completely in shambles now. Right? Every day, we don't know what is the rate. What's the rate now? Last week, for LCs and all, bill payment. What's your bank rate? Channel, what is the rate you people used? ඊයට දොගල bill settle කළේ. Even though the central bank says 204, 205, we know most of the banks, they are trading it with 224, 25. Right? The rates are going up and fluctuating every day. Right? So it's very, very difficult situation. So it's always there's a risk. So when you open a LC and when you order some goods, right? After 2 months, by the time you receive the goods, the dollar rate has gone up from 190 to 220 by 30 rupees. But can you sell those goods in the local market with that difference? Impossible. So sometimes, because of that particular reason, the importer might go bankrupt because he can't sell the goods in the market, right? It is overpriced. Overpriced වුණාට මොනවද කරන්නද? එයා ගෙවලා ගත්තා. එයාට එහෙම නැත්නම් එයා loss එකට දෙන්න ඕන. Right? Local currency can wipe out the entire profit. Whatever the profit can be wiped out because of the exchange rate, foreign exchange risk. Right? Also, interest rate risk due to floating rate loans. That's another one. Right? So, customers are having this type of issues. Cargo risk. Cargo risk. Now, transit disasters are an ever-present hazard for those engaged in international trade. Right? Transit disasters. Such as storms, theft, collision, leakage, explosions, fire, all those things. Right? Those are cargo risks. There are certain countries, if you bribe the customs, you can take an elephant into the country. You can take an elephant into the country. Right? So that type of theft, collision, that type of transit risk are there. Right? When you are having the goods at the port, after 2 days, when the customer comes to collect the goods, some of the goods are not there. Right? ඒවා customs වලින්ම පන්නලා අරන් ගිහිල්ලා. ඒ වගේ දේවල් වෙනවා. එහෙම නැත්නම් අනිත් පැත්තෙන් fraud risks in the frauds, right? As most goods are transported by marine transport, and every exporter should have an elementary knowledge of marine insurance to get the protection at the minimum cost. About 2-3 days back, I had a chat with, I told you, with Chamber of Commerce CEO. He was telling me most of his customers, their clients are, their members are importers or exporters, Chamber of Commerce. Is it a lot of insurance frauds, right? Marine insurance frauds. When you go and check it, when you go and investigate it, you will find most of the risk, cargo risk, due to insufficient coverage of marine insurance, insufficient coverage of marine insurance. Because the people doesn't want to pay the full covered cargo clause A premium. Might as well, they want to do some like third-party insurance කරනවාගේ වාහනේ යාන්තම් insurance කරගෙන cargo clause C එකක් දාගෙන shape වෙන්න යනවා. Actually, the people are pound foolish, penny wise. They are pound foolish, penny wise. Pound එකක් ගැන ගත්තොත් ඒගොල්ලෝ හරි පරිස්සම් වෙනවා. අම්මෝ මේක කරන්න ඕනද නැද්ද කියලා. හැබැයි නෑ sorry. ඒක හොයන්නේවත් නෑ. Pound foolish, penny wise. දැන් penny එකේ වැඩකට හැමදේම හොයනවා. ඒ වගේ වැඩ තමයි මිනිස්සු කරන්නේ කරලා මේ කාගෝ රිස්ක් එක ඇති කරගන්න. අපිමයි කරගන්නේ. ඒකින් අපිම මේවා කවර් කරගන්න ඕන. Commercial risk. Commercial risk is lack of knowledge of the transactions, inability to adapt to environment, different kinds of situations to be dealt with, greater transport time involved, right? If there are greater transport time involved, there can be potential risk, right? For example, from USA to Colombo, 21 days. Anything can happen within that date, within that period, right? So the greater transport time, when there's a greater transport time, there can be risk. Bank risk. When it comes to bank risk, financial instability or poor creditworthiness of the banks. Financial instability or poor creditworthiness of the banks. I'll give you a nice example. ඔගොල්ලෝ සමහර ළමයි නම් ඉපදලා හිටියද දන්නෙත් නෑ මට දන්නේ නෑ 1991 92 වල වගේ ඔගොල්ලෝ ඉපදලා නැද්ද ඉපදලා නැති ඇති නේද ඒ කාලේ they open a new bank in Sri Lanka, called BCCI, Bank of Credit, Bank of Credit and Commerce Industry, right? Credit and Commerce. Sorry, Bank of Credit and Commerce International. BCCI, Bank of Trade and Commerce International. That was the international bank, Pakistan Bank. They had branches all over the world, especially in Asia, right? And when they start business here, a lot of bankers, they joined from their respective banks to this new bank. At that time, I was working for Standard Chartered. Many of even trade guys, they went and joined BCCI for a good salary. And double the salary, they joined. අපිටත් කතා කළා අපි ගියේ නැහැ. Right? One day, normally when I park the vehicle, I park the vehicle near Cargill's and Miller's buildings, right? එතන කා පාක් එකේ දාලා දැන් අපි පයින් යනවා ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් චාර්ටර්ඩ් එකට බේලි ස්ට්‍රීට් එකේ අර බැංක් එකත් බේලි ස්ට්‍රීට් එකේ තිබුණේ. When we are passing the bank, most of the guys who joined the bank from Standard Chartered, some people are waiting outside having a smoke, right? When they see us, how are you? One day I said good morning to those guys when I was walking towards my bank. Evening when I was going to pick my vehicle, all the guys were outside. Entire bank. I thought they are on strike. When I asked them, they said bank was closed down. Can you imagine? In Sri Lanka, bank was closed down due to some bad management or whatever. It went bankrupt and bank was closed down. Thousands of customers, millions of liabilities. With all that, these people have closed down. These guys, what do you call this? Jobs, right? But luckily, I think Ceylon Bank, they came forward and took the operations of BCCI. The Sri Lankan කට්ටිය අන්තන් ෂේප් වුණා. අනිත් රටවල නම් මොනවද දන්නේ අපේ කට්ටිය අන්තම් ෂේප් වෙලා අර මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ගත්ත මේ ලයබිලිටිස් ඔක්කොම සෙරන් එක ගත්තා. අරගෙන රස්සාවල් ටික බේරලා දුන්නා. right? So ඔය වගේ රිස්ක් තියෙන බැංක්ස් එක්ක අපි ඩීල් කරන්න හොඳ නැහැ. right? Poor checking standard නම් වැඩක් නැහැ. Then delay in making payments to correspondents. Delay in making payments to correspondents. This is happening in Sri Lanka also at the moment. But that's because of not of anything else, because of the scarcity of currency. නැත්නම් අපි එච්චරම අපෙන් එහෙම නරක නැහැ. Adherence to ICC rules, right? Being domiciled in countries notorious for forex restrictions and classified as high risk. මේවා එන අතරේ there are certain banks domiciled in countries notorious for forex restrictions and classified as high risk. Right? What are some countries? මේකත් මේ දැන් international trade risk වලට මේ දවස්වල ගොඩක් circulate වෙන risk වලින් එකක් තමයි ඕක. Notorious countries. The Central African countries, the Eastern and Western African countries, then Caribbean islands, are even dangerous banks. So you have to be careful. Fraud risk. Fraud risk. Dealing with a seller who is not known. Very important. Dealing with a seller who is not known. Know who can be even more important than know how. What do you mean by that sentence? Know who can be even more important than know how. Dealing with a seller who is not known, know who can be even more important than know how. When you are dealing with customers, whether the importer or exporter, you should know them properly. Right? That is more important than how you are going to do the business. Right? Even if you are having that much of knowledge about the business you are handling, there's no point if you have if you get caught to a culprit. Right? Then payment for non-existent or worthless goods against presentation of falsified documents by the beneficiary. Payment for non-existent or worthless goods against presentation of falsified documents by the beneficiary. I'll give you a good example. Then it's easy for you to understand. A good example. When I was working for Standard Chartered, one of my customers, he came to me, and one of our very, very good customers, right? Little elderly type, and he was doing business with us for more than 50 years. 50 years in the sense, they are second generation with us, with the bank. More than 50 or 80 years. Very honest, good people. One day he came to me and he said he wants to open a LC for $25,000. In 1994-95, $25,000 is like $500,000 now, right? It's a big amount for 25,000. When I check the LC, normally when a customer gives me a LC application, I normally check it because it's my duty. When I check the application, I saw the unit price was very cheap. This was to import certain electrical items which is daily used by the people on the sale items again, but the prices were very low. Then I asked that guy, Mr. So and so, do you know this customer? Do you know this customer? He said, no, this is the first time I'm dealing business with him. I said, in that case, this price is very low. Do you have any idea why? He said. Then he was telling me, no, even I thought the same thing, but the thing is, Mr. Caldera, if I can get the goods here, I can sell it in the bazaar. I can sell it in the bazaar with a huge profit. With a huge profit. Bazaar එකේ මේ බඩුවල ගාන වැඩි ගොඩක්. ඒක අපිට හොඳ profit එකක් ගන්න. I said, then I asked him, why not you get a, or why don't you put as a condition inspection certificate from an independent party. Then he told me, Mr. Caldera, if I ask for an inspection certificate, then again I'll have to pay about $500 in vain. It's okay. I'm ready to take this risk. අර අපේ සිංහල භාෂාවේ ප්‍රශ්න මේකක් තියෙනවනේ කතාවක් තියෙනවනේ. මොකද්ද කියන්නේ? කිව්වන අහන ගුරු උඩින් ගියත් එකයි යටින් ගියත් එකයි. මම දැන් මගේ පාර්ට් එක කළානේ මම කිව්වා. ඒකනේ මම LC කැඩලා දැම්මා. After 3 weeks, we got the documents. When we checked the documents, it was perfect. It was perfect documents. Then we told this guy, okay, these are perfect documents. You have to pay. Then he said, okay, you give me 2 days, right? Only yesterday the ship came to Sri Lanka. So I have another 2-3 days before demurrage, right? I will settle it once I receive the goods. So then the following day he came and he settled the goods, settled the bills, and we remit the money. Then he took the BL and went to the port and cleared the goods. The following day, the third day, this guy was coming, he was crying, and as soon as he was crying and he came to me and he told me, it's not a wedding. Container එකේ පුරවලා තිබුණේ කැඩිච්ච සරප්පුයි සපත්තුයි මේ පරණ පත්තරයි පිදුරුයි අන්න ඒවන තිබුණේ. So what is it? What has happened? අන්තිමට මොකද වුණේ? මට කරන්න කිසිම දෙයක් නැහැ. මං කිව්වා පාඩ පරණ සරප්පු සපත්තු ගත්තා නම් ඒක මගේ වැඩක් දැන් නෙමෙයි. මම ඔයාලට කිව්වා මේවද කරන්න කියලා. දැන් මොකද කරන්නේ? දැන් අපි සල්ලි ගෙවලා ඉවරයි. ඒක කරලා ඉවරයි. then just forget about it. You pay me the loan. I have given him an import loan to settle the bill. You pay me the loan. It's $25,000 went in the drain, right? But I did a small investigation immediately because our customer, I gave a call to our Hong Kong office because this guy was from Hong Kong. I gave a call to Hong Kong office and gave the address of the party, and I asked the trade finance manager to check it and come back to me immediately. I explained the thing to him. This is the beauty of international banks, right? So they always help. After few hours, 1 or 2 or 3 hours, I got a telex to say no such address in Kowloon. Kowloon is a city, no such address in Kowloon. Right? Everything fraud, forged documents. That guy has vanished after taking the money. මේ වගේ දේවල් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. So that's why I said know who can be even more important than know how. And payment for non-existent or worthless goods against presentation of falsified documents by the beneficiary. Right? Forged documentary credit. Even the documentary credit can be forged. Insurance fraud. What are the insurance fraud? Over-insurance. We over-insure the goods. The actual value is 100,000. We insure the thing for 140,000. 100,000 make it 140,000. Right? ඒක වැරදි. ඊට පස්සේ ගොඩක් කට්ටිය කරන්නේ මේ ඩැමේජ් එකක් කරලා ඕනකමින් ඩැමේජ් එක කරලා කාටද කියන මේක බොට් එක උස්සන්නේ කියලා ඊට පස්සේ මේ ඉන්ෂුරන්ස් එකකින් ක්ලේම් කරනවා. over insurance. අහුනොත් සතයක්වත් හම්බෙන්නේ නැහැ. Charter party frauds. I will discuss this charter party frauds when we are discussing the bill of lading under charter parties. Right? Cargo theft. I mentioned to you. Piracy. එකත් මං කිව්වා Somalian pirates can. The golden rule is if the deal looks too good to be true, it probably can be a fraud. මේකම තමයි මම use කළේ මගේ අනික් customers-ලාට advice කරන්න. If the deal looks too good to be true, it probably can be a fraud. අර Mr. අපේ කස්ටමර්ට වෙච්ච දැක්කනේ garbage හම්බෙච්ච එකන අර රේට් එකට කොහෙන්ද හොයන්නේ මාකට් රේට් එකට වඩා අඩුවෙන් කොහෙන්ද හොයන්නේ ඒක හෙව්වහම ඒක ෂුවර් එකටම ෆ්‍රොඩ් එක DC fraud prevention. PC fraud prevention, the importer, they can check the integrity or financial standing of the exporter or the middleman or the agent. Remember, in DC operations, all parties deal in documents and not in goods. That's what had happened to my customer. I'm dealing only with his documents. Documents perfect. Right? So we are only dealing with documents. That's why we paid. The goods should be readily saleable. Check market prices. Never be too greedy. Right? Ensure that exporter uses reliable shipping line. Tell me why reliable shipping lines. Why we have to use reliable shipping lines? Another answer again. Because normally conference or regular lines are not getting involved in these trade frauds. They are reputed ones. When a shipping companies otherwise register the ad hoc basis, guys. You have to be careful, right? Ask for inspection certificates from independent parties as specified in UCP, right? But they come to know one Uganda Matagati, Magi customer story, Cuba. Check market price, never be too greedy. He was very greedy. That's why he had this issue, right? Avoid shipping guarantees as much as possible. Exporter. The first one was on importer's point of view. Now the exporter's point of view. Check the integrity and financial standing of the importer, middleman or agent, right? Then banks should carefully scrutinize whether the DC is workable. Banks should carefully scrutinize whether the DC is workable, right? The exporter will be able to comply with the terms and conditions of the DC. Ensure no ambiguous terms and conditions. Use reliable forwarding agents. Use reliable forwarding agents. This one, use reliable forwarding agents. Now make it an example again. The mail example ඔයගලන්ට මම හැමතිස්සෙම ඔයගලන්ට කියන්නේ මේ ඕන දෙයක් බලනකොට අපේ ජොබ් එකට කනෙක්ට් කරගන්න ඕන. හැබැයි දැන් මම අහන ප්‍රශ්නෙට ඇත්තට උත්තරේ කියන්නේ කොහොමද? මම yes, right? මම දන්න මේ ළමයි බොරුවට නිකන් පෙන්නන්න මට පෙන්නන්න අපෝ නෑ අපි නම් එහෙම කරන්නේ නෑ කියලා කියන්නේ නෑ. ඔගොල්ලෝ දෙවෙනි නියම බලනවද? ඔව්ද නැද්ද?
නෑ.
දෙවෙනි නියම ටෙලිග්‍රාම් එක බලන්නේ නෑ.
නෑ බලන්න. නෑ.
බලන්නෙම නෑ. හරිම තදින් කිව්වේ බලන්නෙම නෑ. මොකටද බලන්නේ මේ වැඩක් නැති ඒවා නේද? කවුරු බලන කට්ටියක් ඉන්නවද? බලන එක්කෙනෙක් හොය දෙන්නේ ලැජ්ජ වෙන්න දෙයක් නෙමෙයි. මොකද අපිට මේ දවස්වල කරන්න දෙයක්වත් නෑ. හවසට. නිකන් බලන එක just for a joke අපි නේ පාඩමෙන් පොඩ්ඩක් අහකට යන්නේ. හැබැයි ආයි පාඩමට එනවා අපි එක. ඒක පාඩමට අදාළ එකක් මම මේ කියන්නේ. Why we should use reliable forwarding agents කියන එකට. ඒකෙන් තමයි I told my wife also. This is something which I am teaching my students කියලා. You should never do this mistake. Right? If you are not watching the drama, then there's no point of taking that as an example and explain to you, right? We have to use the reliable forwarding agents. That's the last example at the end of the night. Last example at make a venue. What is the risk? We are talking about risk, right? Okay. Avoid granting excessive credit period or limit to the buyer. Avoid granting excessive credit period or limit to the buyer. We should not grant excessive credit period or limit to the buyer. I'll give you another good example on this one. Excessive credit period. There was a මේ සෙෂන් එක මම කර examples වලින් තමයි ලස්සට යන්න පුළුවන්. ඒකට තමයි ඔයගන්ට ඔළුව රටින්නේ. Because you don't have much experience in trade. So now you have to have some stories. A storytelling වලින් ගියාම ලේසි ඔළුවට වැටෙන්න. I had another customer. He was doing business with my bank, but located in Maravilla area, Maravilla, Chilau side, right? Big businessman, a very reliable customer. We have given him facilities for මේක ඔගන්ට කිව්වද මේ packing crate වල ගැන කතා කරද්දී ගිය පාර. Have I given the this thing? Then for packing credit facilities, we have granted him 4 months. 4 months, right? The 4 months කියන්නේ එයාගේ මේ transaction period එක එකට කියන්නේ trade cycle එකනොත් outside යනවා. You know what had happened? This guy has manipulated this period, the excessive period, and he has, instead of doing the exports, it's DC can desiccated coconut, not documented crate. Business was desiccated coconut. When he export the desiccated coconut, rather than paying the bank with the proceeds, he was putting that money to some other business, very high risk business, prawn farming. Prawn farming, no bank is giving facilities. So he has diverted the money to prawn farming. Prawn farming return is very high, but 100% risk. So that's why no bank is giving facilities for prawn farming. So this guy is diverting. And then if something happens, because of the risk high, if something happens, one germ goes to the those field fields වගේනේ තියෙන්නේ water stagnate කරලා මේ කලපු වල ලියදී වගේ ඒවේ එකක් germ එකක් ගොත් everything will go for 6, right? Then you won't be able to recover the packing crate loan. So that risk was there. So the main reason was we have done the mistake. The bank side has done the mistake. We have granted excessive credit period for the customer. So we should not do that, just to this thing. And also we should not, as an exporter, you should not give an excessive credit period to the buyer also. If you are sending the goods on usance or DA terms, again, you should not give excessive credit period. First, you have to check what is their capabilities. Then only you have to do the business. Ensure sufficient insurance cover against transit risk, right? Better to have an agent in buyer's country. This to the issuing bank. So how we can mitigate that risk? How we can mitigate that risk? How we can mitigate that risk? Tell me. Hello, can you hear me? ළමයි ඉන්නවද? ළමයි ඉන්නවද කියලා මම බැලුවේ.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yes, sir, yes.
Yeah. Now මම බැලුවේ ඒක මේ how we can mitigate the risk, insolvency of the customer. As bankers, you should have some idea. Before we open the LCs, we have to have sufficient collateral, right? If something goes wrong, you should be able to recover the money. එහෙම නැතුව අපි නිකන් මේ cash margin එකක්වත් ගන්න නැතුව ඇරියොත් This is what is happening. Frauds, sovereign and regulatory, legal risk. Right? The goods may be damaged or lost in transit. Issuing bank to ensure that the goods are properly insured. Right? Then it's to the applicant or the importer. Non-delivery of goods or fraud risk. Short shipment of inferior goods. Right? Then shipping guarantees. Those are risk. Because if you have released the documents under shipping guarantees, and if you have not received the original documents, then the shipping guarantee will be outstanding. The shipping company will send a claim to the bank and the applicant, right? We all are in trouble. Then foreign exchange risk. Failure of the issuing bank. That has happened during the debacle of BCCI, as I explained, right? Risk mitigation of importer. How to mitigate the risk? You can't eliminate, you can mitigate the risk, right? Deal with sellers with sound reputation and track record. Do you know majority of the frauds happening in international trade operations worldwide is with the first transaction, is always with the first transaction. Greediness in the Tamayanne. Labeta yano, gila, amaru vetna. First transaction, right? With that particular customer. Request for performance guarantee to avoid non-performance risk. Agree on more secured payment methods, DC and open account, right? Buy and sell in the same currency to minimize forex risk. Forward contract and ensure sufficient insurance cover against transit risk. Agree on more secured payment methods. Why I said DC and open account for importer. DC, of course, yes, you know. Why do you say open account? Why do you say open account? Tell me. Can somebody tell me? Come on, Megam. Madi oglange something.
Payment method, open account.
Yeah, payment on open account. Tell me. So
It's a payment method.
payment.
Payment method.
Yeah, payment method, open account. That's what I'm asking. Why it is a secured payment method for importer?
After receiving goods.
Once we clear the consignment, only the payment will be done. After we obtain the customs declaration, the importer only pay the this.
Yeah, that is one. That means once you clear the goods and once you see the goods and once you are 100% sure about there's no fraud about the goods and all, then we will do the payment. Or we will sell the goods and do the payment. Either way, we are secure. Right? Okay. Failure to comply with credit conditions. A lot of exporters, this is what is happening. They don't follow the credit conditions. They have to read, right? Failure or delays in payment from the issuing bank and countries. Other whenever Lanka make a ලංකාවට බඩු යපු exportersලා China, India, Dubai, they are suffering because of delays in payment from the issuing bank, right? Because of bank risk and the country risk and the legal risk. Right. Shall we do this sum? Get your notebooks or papers, right? Answer papers. If you are done, join with me. Give me the answers. Our customer TCP Limited, the business importers of electrical items. Importers of electrical items. Amount and term, monthly single import shipment of US dollars 100,000 each month under LC terms. Payable 90 days from the date of shipment. Payable 90 days from the date of shipment. DC to be issued 30 days prior to the date of shipment. DC to be issued 30 days prior to the date of shipment. Right? Goods will be received by TCP Limited 30 days from the shipment date. So 30 days before the shipment date, you have to open the LC. Then the shipment period will be 30 days. 1 month before the shipment, then 1 month after the shipment, you will receive the goods and documents. Goods are sold immediately in the local market for 120,000 on 90 days credit terms. Immediately, we sell the goods in the local market on 90 days credit terms. Right? There are monthly overhead expenses that the bank is required to finance amount to US dollars 5,000 from the date of receipt of the first shipment. Right? You are required to structure a package of facilities to meet the customer's requirement, especially each type of facility and the revolving limit needed for each facility with reasons. For each financial facility, state the security documentation to be taken and any special conditions that you would lay down. Assume US dollars 1 is equals to LKR 200. Right? Now, 200 now we'll go for the answer. First, we have to do the straight line and mark everything there. Right? I'm crude with but something is better than nothing. Right? We have opened the LC for US dollars 100,000 1 month before the shipment. Right? 1 month before the shipment, the shipment from the shipment date, it will take another 1 month to receive the goods. The moment we receive the goods, and on what condition, what terms they'll be receiving, 90 days from the shipment date. It is a usance one, 90 days from the shipment date. Okay, but anyway, when you receive the goods and the documents, now forget about the goods. We are only worried about the documents. The documents, the LC liability will be reversed. LC liability will be reversed. We will create acceptance liability because this bill of exchange has to be accepted. To be paid, tell me, to be paid after
90 days.
90 days කියන්නේ දැන් අපි accept කරපු දවසේ ඉඳන් 90 days වලින්ද pay කරන්න ඕනේ.
නෑ.
එහෙනම්
30 days. 90 days වලින් තමයි pay කරන්න ඕනේ.
90 days වලින්
accept
Sorry.
කරපු දවසේ ඉඳන් තව 30 days වලින්. 30 days from the date of acceptance.
is it
60 days.
60 days.
60 days.
60 days
60
අන්න වරද්ද යන්න එපා කලබලේ මම හැමතිස්සෙම කියන්නේ විනාඩියක් වැඩි වුණාට කමන්නේ නැහැ හරිද විනාඩියක් වැඩි වුණාට කමන්නේ නැහැ පුතේ මිස් කරගත්තොත් මේ ගණන් එහෙමම ඉවරයි so shipment date එකේ ඉඳන් 90 days from the shipment date. So from the time we accepted the bill, we have to settle the bill after 60 days. Very good. When are we receiving the payment? When we sell the goods in the market, when are we receiving the payment? When are we receiving the payment?
90 days after it's sold from the shipment.
After
Releasing the goods.
what a- on 90 days straight term. Yes. 90 days straight term. Good. Right? That means after 3 months. After 3 months. But even though we are receiving the money after 3 months, after 2 months, we'll have to do the payment. Right? In the owner loan facility. Then we are going to what are the facilities you can you have to give? Facility number one should be, what is it?
Import facility.
Import
LC.
facility. මොකක්ද අපිට කියන්නේ?
LC usance facility.
Issuance of usance LC facility. Issuance of usance LC facility. When you are writing, be careful. You have to always use the word revolving. You have to start with the word revolving. All these facilities are revolving. Once it's finished, once one transaction is finished, that is open for the next one. Right? So it's a revolving usance LC, revolving facility for issuance of usance LCs. Please write it. Please write it in your books. Revolving facility for issuance of usance LC. Then what else? Facility number 2. What is the facility number 2?
Import bill acceptance facility.
Yes, very good. Acceptance of import bill facility. Very good. Then another facility.
Short term loan or OD. Short term.
Short term මොකක්ද අපි ඒකට කියන්නේ?
Short term import loan.
Short-term import loan. Short-term import loan. Short-term import loan to settle accepted bills. Short-term import loan to settle accepted bills. එච්චරද තව තියෙනවද?
To
එච්චරද
meet the
තව
overhead
තියෙනවද?
cost, we'll have to give a short term loan.
Are we giving a short-term loan or
Import.
OD? Import ගන්න බෑ. Import මම මේක ඉඳලා මම මේ short term loan එක overhead වලට අපි import කියන නම ගාවන්න බෑ. සමහර බැංක්ස් මන් දන්නවා මේ කම්පැනි අතු ගන්න කොස්සටයි ඉදලටයි මේ දවස්වල මේ සැනිටයිසර්ස් වලටයි ඔක්කොටමත් තියෙනවා ගන්නවා ඉම්පෝර්ට් ලෝන්. that is wrong. මට අහුවිලා තියෙනවා ඒ වගේ ඒවා. අපි ඉම්පෝර්ට් ලෝන් දෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි මොනවද මේකට දෙන්නේ? either short term loan or overdraft to settle overheads. So those are the facilities we need. Now we'll go one by one. The first one is facility one, that is issuance of LCs. And you have to write the hell, right? That ගානම ලියන්න ගානෙම්ම අරගෙන බොරුවක් ලියලා අතෙන්ට හදලා ගන්න නැත්නම් අපිට ලකුණු අඩු වෙනවා. ලකුණු භාගයට භාගයක් අඩු වෙනවා. ඒකෙන්ද ඒක හැල ලියලා දානවා 100,000 is the amount into 2. Why into 2? Why into 2?
Per month it's 100, so you will need 2 LCs.
When we open an LC, how long it will take to receive the goods?
60
When
days.
we open an LC,
60 days.
60 days,
60 days.
2 months. 2 months.
Yeah,
So,
2 months.
but we want to have monthly LCs. Then at least we need facilities to open 2 LCs. Because the first LC කරලා එක facility එකක් මදි. ඒකේ බඩු වෙන්න ඒක බඩු ආවට LC bill එක accept කරලා LC liability එක reverse වෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් second එකත් අරින්න ඕන. Then we need facilities to open 2 such LCs. Right? Okay. Anybody, if you have any questions, please ask me. Then acceptance of import bills. Tell me the line. Tell me the line. Figures again. දැන් මෙතන ඔයගොල්ලෝ ලියන්න ඕන you have to write acceptance will be 90 days from shipment date. ඒක ලියන්න ඕන. Right? Okay. What is that?
The documents with shipment එක වෙලාවෙ දුන්නා.
එක වෙලාවම එන්නේ නැහැ. එක වෙලාවම එනවයි කියලා තමයි මේ මුළු ඔක්කොම ගණන් වලට ගන්න ඕනේ. BABF exam එකට ගන්න ඕනේ එක වෙලාවෙ එනවයි කියලා. That's the assumption. Otherwise, you are correct. උදාකත් එන්නේ නැහැනේ. වැඩි හිතන්න ගියොත් ගාන හදන්න බෑ. දැන් මේකේ කියන්න බෑ. කීයද amount එක? තාම ඔයගලන්ට උඩට වැටිලා නැහැ. නැත්තම් මිලාට උත්තර එන්න ඕන දඩවැඩි කාලේ එන්න ඕන. Marisha? Shanil, I think you are in trade finance, isn't it?
2 months.
What is the lead time? Now, what is the amount? Amount, of course, you know. How much?
200,000.
200,000?
100,000 each. 100,000 each.
100,000. 100,000 into how many times?
2 times.
2 times, because only after 60 days, only after 2 months, it will be settled. So only after the first one reaches 60th day, එතකොට තමයි ඒ බිල සෙටල් වෙන්නේ. acceptance එක. acceptance එක we pay the acceptance and then we create import loan facility. ඊගාව කියනකොට අරකින් සල්ලි ඇවිල්ලා ඉවරයි. අනිත් තව මාසයක් ගිහලානේ. තව මාසෙකින් අපිට තියෙන ගන්න. නැත්නම් උගන්ට කියන්න පුළුවන් කෙනෙක්ට ආගිය කරත හැකි 120 it has to be received in 90 days. කොහොමද දන්නේ 90 days වලින්ම ලැබෙයිද කියලා? මේ මිනිස්සු මේ කොවිඩ් ඇස්සේ කණුව තිබ්බොත් කියලා අහන්න පුළුවන්. ඒව නෑ. මේ ඇවිල්ලා අපි බිස්නස් කරන්නේ මේ ලෝකෙ මිනිස්සුත් එක්ක නෙමෙයි. දිව්‍ය ලෝකෙ මිනිස්සුත් එක්ක තමයි මේ අපි මේ DABF එකේ ගණන්ට එක හදාගෙන යන්නේ. කණු තියන්නේ නෑ, පොළු තියන්නේ නෑ කියන විදිහට කිව්ව දවසට තිත්තටම දෙනවා කියලා හිතාන තමයි යන්න ඕනේ. right? okay. එතකොට facility 2 එක තමයි $100,000 into 2 equals to $200,000. Okay. What is the third facility? Import loan to settle the accepted bills. Tell me the line. Got it. Import loan to settle the accepted bills. How much import loan value we had to give?
And 20,000.
The accepted bill ගෙවන්න අපිට we have to give an import loan. What should be the value?
$20 million.
Huh? I'm sorry.
$20 million.
200,000. 100,000 into 2.
ඒ මොකටද 100,000 into 2?
Import bill එක settle කරන්න.
Oh.
Bills දෙකක් outstanding වෙනවනේ sir.
What about the others? What about the others? What about others? ඒ පුතා විතරයි කතා කරන්නේ. හරි වැරදි වෙනම දෙයක්. දැන් අපි කතා කරන්නේ හරි වැරදි. දැන් what about others? ලොකුම දේ I respect you, Buddha, because you have the backbone to discuss this. Others, spineless, bankers, you are not talking. You are not talking. මේක මේ ක්ලාස් එක කතා කරන්න ඕන. කතා කරලා මේ එහෙම නැත්නම් ගණන් කරන්න බෑ. මොකද මේක ෆිසිකල් නෙමෙයි ආ. ෆිසිකල් නම් මම ළඟට ඇවිල්ලා බලන් ඉන්න ඕගොල්ලෝ ගාව ක්ලාස් එකේ මාව මගේ ඉගෙනගත්ත ළමයි දන්නවා. මම ළමෙක් ගාව ගානක් කරනකොට මම පිටිපස්සෙන් ඉන්නවා. වටේ මුළු ක්ලාස් එකේම ඇවිද මම ඉන්නවා ළමයි. මේක නෑ. ඉතින් ඕගොල්ලෝ මට කියන්න ඕන ඕගොල්ලන්ගේ ඔළුවේ තියෙන ඒවා. right? import loan settle කරන්න අපි කීයෙන්ද මොකද්ද amount එක? We have to settle both bills, so we have to settle one bill at a time.
One bill at a time.
One bill at a time. So what then what is the value?
100,000.
100,000. 100,000. Into how many times? What is the lead time? Now,
1 month.
one. The reason is, Puta, earlier, the boy who answered, you said to settle two bills, Kineka. The first accepted bill will be matured after 2 months, right? Then second accepted bill will be matured after 3 months. You know, it's the first take about it. First bill will be matured after 2 months. But we don't have money to settle the loan or settle the bill because we will be getting the money only after 90 days, 3 months. Now, after 2 months, we'll have to settle, but we'll be getting the money after 3 months. 1 month gap is there. So we give them an import loan. That import, when we give the import loan, we will debit import loan and credit acceptance liability. Except we credit acceptance liability and pay the money. We remit the money to the exporter. We remit the money to the exporter. එයාට ගෙවන්න ඕනේ 90 days after shipment. එතන මෙතන 6 days යනකොට we have to pay the exporter. Right? But when we pay that, from that point, acceptance is reversed. Acceptance is reversed, and we create an import loan for that. අපි import loan එක debit කරලා අපේ settlement එක යවුවා. Now we have created the import loan, but now we have a vacuum, or we have released one accepted bill. එතකොට තව අපිට මේ acceptance payment accepted bill එකකට facility එක නිකම්ම open up වෙලා. Now the facility has open up, right? අර reverse වෙනවනේ, reverse වෙනව open up. ඒ කියන්නේ අපිට two bills වලට acceptance ඇති වුණේ. ඒ වගේමයි payment එකේදී we need only one import loan. Only one import loan. Then once we receive the money, $120 after 1 month, then we will settle the import loan. Then the import loan will also open. Import loan also open for the next one. Then the second accepted bill will come. Now we have the facility. Import loan facility, import loan facility. A bill එකක් ගෙවලා දැම්මා. That is why we said revolving facilities, right? The third one, ODR short-term loan for clearing charges. How much? How much?
5,000.
5,000 into
3.
3.
3 times.
3. Very good. 5,000 into 3. නැත්තම් අපිට ඒක සල්ලි එන්නේ after 3 months. අපිට තමයි එන්නේ. අපිට ඒ වගේ තුන් bills තුනක් ගෙවන්න, clearing charges තුනක් ගෙවන්න අපිට facility එකක් දෙන්න ඕන. Okay? So this is the answer. But these are very, very small ones, right? දැන් ඔයගොල්ලෝ කරගෙන ඉන්න ඕන අනිත් දවසේ සිල්වයි පිලාන එකයි.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
Now, even for the acceptance of import bill facility, has it to be revolving? The word
Yes.
revolving should come in the beginning for both short-term revolving import loan as well as
Yes.
acceptance also revolving, no? Right.
Thank you very much, Pudha. I have not put that, but every facility you have to start with revolving. Every facility you have to start with revolving. But එකක් ගෙවෙනකොට තව එකක් ඒක open වෙනවා. ඒක revolving, right? Revolving facility for acceptance of import bill. Revolving facility for import loan to settle accepted bills. Revolving facility for OD or short-term loan for clearing charges. Everything revolving, right? Okay. Anything else? Right. Okay. Abhi, ගොඩක් වෙලා ගියා. Are you having another class? No?
No.
No. Okay, fine. Then next day you have to do at least two more sums, right? So I will do one of the new topics, and like today we'll try to do one or two this thing. Right? Okay. Right. අපි බලු පැටියටත් බයි බයි කියලා ගියමු. Okay. Then be careful and stay safe till next week. We'll meet. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.